Never downgrade, always upgrade.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_Beeble. Today's show also brought to you by Indochino, so check out Indochino.com. Today we are going to be looking at the projections over at Basketball Monster. I do a set of projections over there. Kyle McKeown does a set of projections over there. So of course we're going to have some differences in the way that we view rotations, in players, in how things are going to work out throughout the course of this season. So I have brought Kyle on to today's show so we can talk about these differences that we have between our sets and try and justify why we have certain guys higher than what other people do. Kyle, welcome to the show.
I love you guys, except for you, Ken.
Thanks for having me on, Josh. Appreciate it as always, brother.
Michael Bolton, he's ready to go.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed, Kyle. We are going to start, or you're going to start, by telling me why I am wrong about a certain Mitchell Robinson.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
Well, we've got discrepancies in our Mitchell Robinson projections. I'm only projecting him to play about 26 minutes per game. And that's having to come out a lot further down in the rankings than where you've got him coming out. So you've got Mitchell Robinson coming out at number 48 in 8-cat rankings, whereas I have him coming out at sugar plums. I'm sorry. I looked up, had the wrong one pulled up. I've got him coming out at 58. You've got him at 28 minutes. I've got him projected for 26 minutes. And I feel like that's the kind of the biggest discrepancy is just the amount of minutes we expect Mitchell Robinson to get in the Knicks rotation this season.
Yeah, look, I had him higher than that, but the more I think about the nonsense that Fizdale pulls, the more I think about those other players there who aren't going to be shy about demanding their minutes, especially Bobby Portis, of course. You're going to have Taj Gibson, who is going to have to play somewhere. And if they're going to force Kevin Knox to play minutes, that means more Marcus Morris at the 4, which means less Bobby Portis at the 4, which means less Taj Gibson at the 4, which means more minutes at center. We know Mitch Robinson had foul problems, and I've said all along with Robinson, he can block a lot of shots and he can win you that category, but it's so volatile to have one bloke who just gets so many categories or stats in that one category that where the variance comes in, it can be quite difficult to deal with him, especially with some of the positions he's being drafted at the moment. Now, ranked 25th on Yahoo is too high for me, and I have dropped him down a little bit. I still have a bit more faith that at least somebody in this Knicks organization will go, no, he's actually the guy we need to play these minutes.
Definitely, look, Mitchell Robinson should be the one guy on this roster that they feed minutes to without any apologies, but we know that we can't trust anything the Knicks say. So, and that's based on last year, whether it was the front office telling us a bunch of stuff about the team's direction or Coach Fizdale telling us things about the team's direction one day and then the next day saying something completely different. Now, Fizdale may not even be lying in these instances as much as the situation changes from day to day for him, or his perspective of the players
he changes his mind
from day to day.
Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily lying. I just think that he has no conviction in what he says. He'll say one thing, and the day later he'll go, oh, actually, maybe I want to do the exact opposite. I don't think he's deliberately misleading. I just think he has no conviction in what he's doing or no set plan, and that's what always has been my criticism with him. So that's the concern. Now, I think we both agree with Robinson that he will play more minutes than he did last season, but that will also lead to a decrease in his block rate. So that's the concern I had, because he was blocking shots at a ridiculous level last year, of course, but when he started to get those more minutes a greater increase in his minutes at the end of the season, we saw the block rate drop down. And over his final 15 games where he played 26 minutes a night, it went to 3.5 blocks per 36, and it had been at 4.5 previous to that. So that's what, in order to stay on the court, stay out of foul trouble, I think his block numbers are going to come down a little bit, at least on a per minute basis.
Okay, so, and look, Josh, the main reason why I'm not willing to go over 26 minutes for Mitchell Robinson is because it's not just Fizdale. It's also the possibility that he does still get in plenty of foul trouble. So then you have that mix that whereas if you were just looking at Fizdale, you can say, all right, we should feel comfortable about 28 minutes for Mitchell Robinson with a ceiling upwards of 32 or more.
Yep.
But because you've got the Fizdale factor and the possibility that he gets into foul trouble still, that's where it made me kind of come down a little bit more, settle in at 26 minutes. And that's just going to make it for a lot of leagues where I don't get Mitchell Robinson because other people see him ranked at 25 for O rank on Yahoo, which takes into account his turnovers, and he's just not going to have many turnovers. So it kind of makes his ranking a little bit more wonky. He doesn't get assists. He doesn't do much. If Mitchell Robinson gets the ball, he either dunks it or he gives it away to somebody else. And for the most part, he only touches it if he's about to dunk it. So, yeah, there's just a lot of risk in taking Mitchell Robinson if you're getting him earlier in drafts right now. So a lot of times I'm just not going to get him this season because I think his perception is overinflated based on the risk that comes with him.
Yeah, look, I can understand that. Look, I think you would probably agree that you can see a situation where he does play 30 a night, but I can also see a situation where he plays 25 a night. So there's a lot of risk there, and taking him at upper levels of that risk level, it is tough. You can't say, well, I think he can be a top 25 player, so I'll take him at 25 like that. I don't think that's smart. But I feel better than you do about him getting those 26 minutes. I think he'll get more than that. Again, I don't have that confidence. And on a week-to-week basis, he might play 30 minutes, he might play 21 minutes, then he might play 25 the next game. So it's going to be all over the place. Head-to-head, small sample size, weekly matchups, 3 games, 4 games. That variance could also be a real problem there. And, of course, in Roto, so many weaknesses in his game that does make it harder. So there is some concerns there, no doubt about that. Let's move on to the next lot of guys,
Josh,
or the next guy.
I'm sorry, really quick.
Yeah.
Where would you take him? Like, where would you feel comfortable taking Mitchell Robinson? I would want him to fall to, like, later just because of the amount of risk that would come with him. And it's not even just about that particular player. It's often about who else is available around this player when I would be forced to take him, because then we start to go into this comparison thing where it says, okay, should I get Mitchell Robinson or should I take Jaren Jackson Jr.? And I can tell you with certainty who the hell I'd take between those two. And that's another reason why when I start to think about Mitchell Robinson and where he's going in drafts and how high he's going in drafts, I just won't get him on any of my teams.
I think I took him in a mock draft maybe at the back end of a 3rd round because I had no blocks early on. I had some real high free throw guys. Maybe it was 4th round. I wouldn't go into the 2nd round. I wouldn't go into the early part of the 3rd round. I think, again, depending on how my team looked, that 3rd, 4th round turn, I would consider it. But again, who else is available at that point? That is, and that's when people always go, I'll rank these guys. It's never as simple as that. Who's still available? Who's around? How does that fit your team? What stats have come off the board? What do I need here to be competitive? What other numbers do I need? And I think that's about the range. But again, if he finished the season as the 50th ranked player, I wouldn't be surprised. 60th, I wouldn't be surprised. And there are some definite concerns in how the game overall looks, and those. We could even both look silly here because he could play 33 a night and block 3.5 shots a game and be a top 20 guy. I don't think it's happening, but that is a possibility. It's in the range of outcomes for Mitchell Robinson. Kyle, I'm going to ask you a question now. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. All right, so you have him as the 39th ranked player. Projected 39th. I have him as 61st. So a bit of a discrepancy there. We've got them playing similar minutes. 33 for me, 34 for you. What is the big difference happening between our numbers? I think a lot of that, and people again have to realize this is not a case of you listing him as the 39th best player and fitting other guys around him, because our projection numbers, they're not all that different. It's, again, a lot of it is depending on how we've got other guys around them projected, the relative value of the strengths of their stats. You've got him shooting better percentages, better 3-point percentage, higher volume of threes. So for a guy that last season took only 1.7 3-point attempts per game in his 27 minutes, you've got that jumping pretty high. Why?
The main reason I have Shai's 3-point attempts going up is because whereas last year he started at point guard, and then he had complementary guards who could also do some ball handling, whether that was Patrick Beverley or Lou Williams off the bench. On this team, he has Chris Paul, one of the best point guards ever. Shai's going to be playing shooting guard. He's going to be playing off ball more than he did even last season, at least in my estimation. So from that understanding, and also having somebody give him the ball, who's Chris Paul, who's a better distributor, who's going to give him a little bit more time, or maybe the ball a little bit more in his shooting pocket than you would say a guy like Patrick Beverley or even Lou Williams, who's both these guys are good passers. It's not to say they're not good, not good, but they're not Chris Paul.
They're not great.
And they're also not going to have the ball in their hands to the same level that Chris Paul is. So I'm mostly just looking at the situation now with Shay Gill just being with the Thunder, playing next to Chris Paul, and expecting his numbers to lead to more three-point attempts, and for those to be caught in good position for him to hit them at a higher efficiency.
Of course, ESPN's rank is absolutely nonsense for Gilgeous-Alexander, 173. That's ridiculous. Yahoo's got him at 75. Fantrax ADP is at 84. So both of us come under that. I'm at 61. As I said, you're way higher than that. Now, in saying all this, you've got him ranked as a top 40 guy, as a start of the fourth round type of a player. Would you take him there? Or knowing that everyone else has got him a bit lower, would you want to wait there? Where would you feel comfortable in taking Gilgeous-Alexander?
The Yahoo ADP for Shai is his O rank is 75 on Yahoo. His ADP is 79. So from that perspective, if you're drafting on Yahoo and you see Shai Gilgeous in my basketball monster projections is at 39 or Josh is at 61, you can think to yourself, okay, I anticipate him being a value of about 40 to 60 but to take him a little bit later. I don't have to reach for him at pick 40 just because Kyle's rankings say that. And that's not where I'm getting him. In most cases, I'm looking at Shai as like a 5th or 6th round pick and hoping that I can get him right before that Yahoo ADP or target him around that area. Having said that, a lot of the Yahoo drafts that I get and I do a mock of right now, he's gone in the 5th round. If he's not gone in the 5th, he's definitely gone in the 6th. So like, as much as I've tried to wait for Shai sometimes, if it gets to the 5th round and I'm playing in a rotisserie league where I feel like his percentages are even more important than at that guard position, then I'll probably make sure I get him in the 5th round or 6th round. Whereas in a head-to-head league, I might just let him drop and see if he can come to me a little bit after that 75-0 rank that he's at or just around that area, depending on where I'm drafting, of course.
I think that's a good point as well to mention, is that you've got him ranked highly. You're really excited about him for this season. But just because you have that, it doesn't mean you don't have to go in and go, I have to get Gilgeous-Alexander at every situation. If you go, well, I'm not going to take him in the 3rd. I'm not going to take him in the 4th. Let's see what happens in the 5th. If someone wants to reach for him in the 4th, you're not going to be like, oh, damn it, I missed out on Shai, because it's all about getting value, about getting the right spot, picking them where they're going to have this really... a winning team has a lot of guys that exceed their ADP. If you're getting everyone right at that level, then you're not getting that extra value. So it's not about going into a draft, these are the guys I have to get, because in the end you end up spending too much in an auction, spending an early pick in a draft to get those guys, whereas when they fall, that's where the value comes. That's where the winning basketball comes in, winning fantasy basketball comes in. Now, I don't have Shai as high as you. I don't think he's going to increase that 3 volume to the degree that you do. I think that the shooting was really high last season, very limited attempts. I'm a little bit cautious about that being able to continue. But if Chris Paul leaves, then we might see the assists fly up through the roof. I think there's a lot of value in that for Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm just not as high on him, especially with that 3-point volume. I could be completely wrong on that, of course, as both of us could. I'm just not quite there with Gilgeous-Alexander at that level, but I'm still higher than most.
I'll admit, like, there's certain aspects of his projection that maybe I could look through and I could say, all right, yeah, Josh makes good points. I can bring down his efficiency on his 3-point shot or his 2-point field goal attempts or what have you. But the fact that Chris Paul is largely regarded as one of the more likely players or more possible players to get traded at some point this season, I'm looking around and saying there's really only upside for Shai. There's not much in the way of downside. In fact, I look at the 61 ranking and I'm saying, like, that's the downside almost for me. Yep. Like that's his floor, because also in Billy Donovan's system where we saw Russell Westbrook just putting up tons of rebounds, that's partially because the system says, hey, we're going to have our big men and everybody else box out. We want our ball handlers to go get these rebounds. So we might see Shai go out and get more rebounds than what we expect as well. We might see him, if Chris Paul's gone, get the assists up. So, and then beyond all that, Billy Donovan also in the past has shown a clear willingness to play his best players 36 minutes a game, 37 minutes a game. So I've projected Shai for 34 minutes, you for 33. there's a ceiling above that where if he plays 36, 37 minutes a game, because he's one of the top 2 or 3 players on this team, he's the number 1 player in regards to who they want to build around going forward for the future, not Danilo Gallinari, not Chris Paul, not Steven Adams. So I see a berth for even more value for Shai, to the point that when I first did my projection and I first gave him 36 minutes, he was coming out as like the 21st overall player for 8-Cat, which was just crazy. So I had to go in and kind of not necessarily finagle things down, but just kind of take a fresh look at it and say, where might I be overstepping things a little bit?
Yeah, look, it's definitely a possibility that those minutes do rise up for Gilgeous-Alexander. He's going to be an interesting guy for sure this season in his second year in the NBA. Kyle, let's you can have a go at me. Which player do you want to have a crack at here in terms of my projections?
Josh, I want to talk about somebody who everybody wants to know when they should draft him. Season, because it's always hard to put the tail on the donkey for rookies. Zion Williamson. We saw him early in the draft. Early in the preseason drafts during the summer, people were taking Zion at the end, like with the last pick of the first round or the very start of the second round, because they just saw his stat profile and what he can do in defensive things and all that. And then him play half of a game in summer league before the earthquake, and people saw him steal the ball away from Kevin Knox and do these dunks, but we also saw his shot look a little bit off. So that gave you worry about his percentages maybe a little bit. I guess when you're looking at Zion Williamson, you've got him ranked 26th in 8-Cat. I've got him ranked 47th. What is it about Zion Williamson that says he's got that chance to be, if not a third round player, possibly even a second round player?
I wouldn't pick him in the second round for a start. I do have him coming out that high, and there is a significant risk here. The big difference between what we've done in projections is minutes as well. I've gone with 33. You've just gone with a flat 30 on his projections. You've also giving him a larger 3-point volume, which is going to be a weakness for him. I've decreased that, which also helps his overall field goal percentage. So that's the biggest difference here between us. I also really have dug into watching him play defense in college, watching the way he was able to generate steals and his quickness on that first step to get those. And initially I had his steals a bit lower. I did bump them back up because his steal and block rates in college were absolutely phenomenal. His field goal percentage was through the roof. Now, he's not going to be a 70% field goal guy like he was in college, but I think he can be a 50% guy on a lot of dunks. I don't think he's going to be taking tons of three-pointers. I still think that we can talk about, his athleticism against NBA guys. I don't worry about that. He is, again, a top-level athlete even compared to NBA players. The three-point shooting is a worry, but again, the difference I have here is I just don't think he's going to be taking as many as what you think he is, and I think that defensive stats, especially the steals, will translate as well as the rebounds. Just hearing a lot of people talking about him, watching a lot of this film of him doing that, they're the things that I think can translate across. Plus, I think on a really fast-paced New Orleans team, they're going to want to get Zion out there. I think 30 minutes that you've got him for is probably a bit low.
No, I would definitely agree about that in regards to our minutes projections, and that's one of the things that I do love about the fact that we have the two different projection sets on Basketball Monsters, that you can essentially have a range now by saying, okay, Kyle, I projected Zion for 30 minutes. He's at a rank of 47 for 8-Cat. Josh has him at 33 minutes, and he's got a rank of 26. There's your range. I've essentially projected the floor or bottom for Zion Williamson this season. He's almost certainly going to be a top 50 player in most respects. And Josh has shown that he can be close to a second round player if he plays enough minutes. And we also see it could go, his stat line could definitely fall out a couple different ways. The fact that he's going to spend almost all of his time playing power forward, not necessarily be center. Maybe we see those block numbers not meet our expectations. But like you said, his speed at that power forward position, if he does get matched up against a lot of guys, or if he sees opportunities to kind of attack the passing lanes, he definitely could get more steals than expected. So you don't want to necessarily look at his block rate from college and then try to put that straight away over to the NBA, because you see guys with Jaren Jackson last year, how playing away from the basket, it's gonna affect your block rate so much. Yeah,
look, those numbers in college were insane, and the field goal percentage, steals, and blocks in college were all stupidly high, and they're not going to continue at that level. They'll still be good, I believe, and that's our major difference is minutes, steal rate, and 3-point volume, and that all pushes him higher in my opinion. Look, to draft him, Kyle, you're never going to get him at pick 47, I don't believe. So you're probably not going to have any of him.
Right.
I've seen him fall into the 4th round in a few mocks I've done, so you can still get that value on him. And even though, I've seen a lot of guys that I like ahead of him, say like a John Collins, DeAndre Ayton, even fall into that 30 range. So I'm left with 3 guys who I go, well, these guys are mid to early 20s players, and I'm choosing between them in the middle of the 30s. So it means that I don't necessarily end up with Zion in those situations as well, because other players fall. The players get taken above him, and there are other ways to look at that and to build that team. But there is, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty because we don't know how these defensive numbers are going to come across. I have faith in Zion to be able to do this, and I think the minutes will be there for him. Maybe it's 31 earlier in the season and 35 later in the season, but overall, I think he can push to that number of 33 per game as the season goes on. Kyle, the next one from your bunch of players, we're going back to Oklahoma City, the Rooster, the Italian cock.
Hands off my cock!
Danilo Gallinari. You have got him like super aggressively projected in terms of your rank number at number 19. I've got him at number 30. Number 19 on a per game basis. Now, I don't think either of us are saying, well, he's going to be playing 75 games. Actually, I know neither of us are actually saying that about him. But at number 19, first of all, before we get into you defending your craziness here, we need to stress to people that you're not saying to pick Danilo Gallinari at number 19.
No, I went in, I did the projections, and when they came out, this is where the ranking fell for Danilo Gallinari. And it's because I'm expecting him to take more shots. I'm expecting him to play more minutes per game. Want to know where the biggest discrepancy is for Josh and I from my ranking of 19 and Josh's ranking of 30. It's because I'm expecting, or I'm giving Danilo Gallinari the benefit of the doubt that his field goal percentage that went up last year with the Clippers stays up this year with the Thunder, with him playing next to Chris Paul, with him playing next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander again. I'm hoping that he gets the ball in similar situations, maintains his efficiency that he had last season. Because if he doesn't maintain his efficiency that he had last season, his ranking's going to tumble dramatically. So that's another aspect of understanding the projections and looking at it and saying, like, okay, Kyle has Danilo Gallinari kind of projected to his regards at 33 minutes, and with the field goal percentage that he has him at, whereas Josh is kind of mitigating that field goal percentage risk and also bringing down the minutes a tad closer to where he was last season. I think Billy Donovan might play Danilo Gallinari more minutes, and there's even a little upside on those minutes, as I painted out before, talking about Shai.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at the minutes now. I've got him at 31. I think that might be low because, again, who's going to play these minutes? Are they going to trust Andre Robertson? Is it going to be Abdul Nadir? So I might be a little bit low. I still believe that the efficiency, like I've got him at a true shooting of 60%. He was at 63 last year, so I have dropped him off a bit there because the year before he was at 55. But he's had 60 plus true shootings in the past, one of them in 16-17. So I'm a little bit cautious on how that fits, but we both agree he's going to take a lot of shots. We both agree he's going to score in excess of 23 points per game. He's going to hit a lot of threes. He's going to do very little defensively. It's all going to come down to that efficiency difference, and that we talk about it a lot, or I talk about it a lot, is that, you know, big swings or swings in efficiency can have big swings overall in where you sit in a fantasy rank situation. And I think that's the big swing point here for us. But we're not looking to take Danilo Gallinari at pick number 19, and even me at number 30. He's ranked 55th overall on Yahoo. And I think, with the injury concerns with him, I still believe if we go onto Basketball Monster and you click the replacement players button in the projections, it drops him down, and that includes his games that we think he's going to play plus a replacement level player added on to equal 82, and you do that with all players. It drops him down to me to number 44. So it's not a huge tumble, and it's still below, or it's still earlier than what his overall rank is. So I still think there's value in him, and I'm tending to agree a little bit there on the minutes for Gallinari. I could see him getting a little bit more playing time than what I've got him initially projected for. So there is some upside in him there. The injury is going to be key. He's not going to be the league winner that he was last year, where he was picked in the last round and was absolutely ridiculously good. That's not going to be the case this year. But he's an interesting one for sure, because someone has to take shots, and he is the most proven scorer on this team at this point.
Absolutely. I had another thought about Danilo, but it left me, so we'll just move on. Oh, I wrote an article that's called "Where Should I Draft Danilo Gallinari?" Because he is, he's somebody who was going in the final couple rounds of drafts last year. You were able to grab Danilo Gallinari in like the final round of some drafts last season, and then he ended up being a top 40 player for ACAT. So, I mean, if you did that, you were feeling great. But it's a whole new season. You got to look at it from historical context, his new playing situation, and then also what's the risk of Danilo Gallinari's field goal percentage taking a huge hit, or him just not playing in 20 plus games, which has happened a lot during his career. So the article is kind of an in-depth look at trying to discern where is it safe to take Danilo Gallinari, and I'll tell you what, not 19th.
Yeah,
so don't go taking him
that
based
is
on
not
that
the safe
ranking.
spot. All right, Kyle, who do you want to criticize me about here?
That's so harsh to say criticism. I just want to hear what you think more about Zach Collins. I've got him ranked 133rd for 8K, and you've got him ranked. The big issue here is I've only got Zach Collins projected for 29 minutes per game, which is where you have him projected for 32. And from my point of view on Zach Collins, the reason I was reluctant to give him over 30 minutes or even 30 minutes is because as much as we all expect Zach Collins to start at power forward this coming season, I didn't really see Terry Stotts come out and deliberately say he's our starting power forward next year. So that just it leaves me a little bit of trepidation in trying to push too many minutes on him, especially in the first year that he might be taking over that starting role.
Why are you calling me? I'm right.
I am right. 32 minutes I've got for him. I'll tell you why, Kyle, because their backup center is Pau Gasol, who is older than me, who struggled to stay healthy. And from what I've heard about Portland is they will start Zach Collins at power forward, and then he'll also play some backup center. So initially I think I had him at 30 minutes, maybe 31. And then I looked more into it and I go, well, he's going to have to play backup center as well. So that's where I got those extra couple of minutes from. High block rate guy last season. I don't have that as high as where it was last year. We both have dropped that down. Again, playing power forward versus playing center does drop that off. So that's where I've got it. He can hit threes, and he did that okay last season. He was quite wildly fluctuating in those numbers, but I think he can do that. But again, it's just coming down to minutes here in terms of opportunity, and I just see those extra 3 minutes that I've got him versus where you have him as him playing those minutes behind Hassan Whiteside. Now, maybe at the end of the year, that cuts off when Nurkic eventually returns and he's just exclusively a power forward. But maybe he plays 33 minutes a night for the first 3-4 months and then goes down to 30, 31 minutes. But I think by then he would have established himself and he will start to get those minutes at power forward. Because if I look at their roster, who is their backup power forward at this point? Like, who are we looking at? Skal Labissiere? I don't know who's playing those minutes behind him. There's no Al-Farouq Aminu, there's no Mo Harkless, who took nearly all of those minutes at power forward. Now, power forward's not Zach Collins' best position, I don't believe, but the options they have there, they're just so limited. And maybe it's Mario Hezonja.
It's me, Mario!
Who I actually really like, but I don't think they're going to give him that level of minutes to play there behind Zach Collins. So that's the difference that I have there, between our projections, those extra 3 minutes, is playing there at center and a lack of faith in those options behind Zach Collins.
Well, even though, the deeper you get into drafts and the deeper we get to like the 10th round and beyond, it's all pretty flat as far as the players and who you're going to be drafting from number 100 down to essentially like 150, 160.
It's very flat.
And especially like the 100 to 130. So the fact that you have Zach Collins ranked at 102 and I'm at 133, like I'm going to be drafting that guy in like the 10th round. Or wherever I see him falling. And, essentially you get to a point later in the drafts where you're looking around and you're looking at the available big men and you're saying to yourself, do I take JaVale McGee and his potential 22 to 24 minutes this year? Or do I take one of these other
DeAndre
big
Jordan.
men like Dwight Powell, who might get, into a timeshare with Maxi Kleber? Or do I go with Zach Collins? And so, I mean, those are the guys you're going against, but it also gets to a point where like block candidates who are likely to start this season and play big potential minutes. So even though Zach Collins I would say his projection for me is probably closer to his floor. I think it's really weird how his projection is going to be somewhat similar to the production that we've seen out of Al-Farouq Aminu in that role the last few years. But it makes me also think like there's got to be a higher ceiling for Zach Collins. In his defense about playing power forward, he's actually came out and said like I would prefer to be playing center. I like protecting the rim, and like that gives me a little bit of hope that even in his role further, out on the perimeter more, that maybe he'll find ways, like you said, to just steal those backup center minutes, and maybe Hassan Whiteside never plays the kind of minutes that people expect while Nurkic is out.
That's a possibility. The Blazers also run those systems where the big men do drop back quite a bit. They don't aggressively go out as much. That does lead to higher block numbers, and maybe they'll do that with both Whiteside and Collins, especially with Collins' potential issues guarding on the perimeter. So there is a possibility there. Again, I'm not expecting him to be a top 70 sort of a player, but I think that there is still even some upside in what I've got him for. Maybe the usage goes up. I've got the usage dropping down this season, playing more with the starters versus a bench unit. He was at 16.5 last year. I've got him under 16. Just because he plays more minutes with Lillard, with McCollum, versus playing in that bench unit with guys like Evan Turner. So that's why I've dropped some of that down, but I think his efficiency will be helped in that area, and I do think that those extra minutes will come Zach Collins' way. Kyle.
Another one.
Let's go on to, who am I going to talk about here for you? Let's talk about a player that everyone wants to hear about, Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks. You have got him at number 17 for the 8-cat numbers. I've got him at 28. The big difference that I can see here between our numbers or our projections, there's some small differences right across it, but it's you having more faith than me in a rise in free throw percentage. You've got him up to 77. I've got him at 75. Now, he was at just 71 last season. So we're both expecting a big improvement in his overall efficiency, but you've gone closer to say what he was doing over in Europe. Is it just the case of thinking, well, I don't know why he was so bad last year when he's always been a good free throw shooter, so I'm banking on that coming back?
I mean, I think it's just the longer season and more games and his body getting wore down a little bit and playing a lot as a 19-year-old rookie in the NBA. I think does FIBA, are the games actually 40 minutes or are they 48?
No, they're 40. Yeah, they're 40.
Okay, so like it's a longer game. It's more action out there. It's arguably, I guess I don't want to say it's more physical or anything like that and kind of speak in those broad terms, but there's reason to suspect based on what we've seen Luka do overseas, which I believe he shot 78% in his last season overseas, that we would expect him to improve that or get back to where he was next season. So I think for me, putting him at 76%, I feel like that's a reasonable projection, even though he only did shoot 71% last season and even struggled a little bit more than that over his final 30 games with shooting just 69%.
So again, when we look at it, you look at the numbers, they don't look all that different between our projection sets, but the way that rankings are adjusted is on a standard score basis. So it depends on how we've got other guys projected. So for example, you've got 7.6 assists for Luka. I've got 7.5. It's a bee's dick difference. Like, it's really, really small. But when you look at the standard score, there's a bigger margin there, and that is big because when you look at those differences, it means that I've got a few other guys around that area projected with more assists. So the value of 7.5 becomes less than what it is in a situation where there are fewer assists going around in your set of projections, and that's the way a lot of this stuff works. The 0.2 difference in our rebounds. You've got the rebounds higher there, but the big difference in the Z-score value there is because I've got other guys rebounding at higher rates, dropping the importance of those 8.7 rebounds. So we can look at those numbers. They look pretty similar. We're not that far off, apart from that free throw percentage, which is a pretty big discrepancy and probably accounts for nearly all of the difference here in our rankings. So I've got him Doncic more as a third-round guy. You've got him more as a second-round guy, but that is important to note. Now, Kyle, would you take him in the second round? We had Gallinari as the 19th ranked player. You wouldn't take him there. Yahoo's got Doncic ranked 19th. You've got him 17th. So are you happy grabbing him in that mid to late portion of a second round?
I think, well, the other thing is in head-to-head, a lot of the times I like to reference a punt both percentages ranking where you're punting both field goal percentage and free throw percentage, just to give myself the perspective of saying, all right, if all I'm worried about is the counting stats for this player, the points, rebounds, threes, assists, steals, and blocks, and I'm not worried about his turnovers, where would he rank in that respect? And Luka's like a top 8 player in that respect. So that's another way to point to me in head-to-head leagues if I don't want to put as big of an emphasis on the percentages, because there can be some big swings, especially for him in particular this season. Then maybe I'll just want to see what's the perspective of him with his counting stats, and those are what I want to lean on as far as like what I'm expecting from him to contribute for my head-to-head team. So from that perspective, I get to a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm comfortable taking Luka in the second round. You're not going to get him outside of the second round on Yahoo. So there's enough evidence, at least from my perspective, that he can return that value. So I'm happy to take him there. Plus he's the number 1 player on his team. He did historic stuff as a rookie. We're looking at a lot of the Trae Young numbers and projecting him to be close to a second round player as well in many respects. So I think we're looking at these guys' situations, and as much as you'd like to be tepid in projecting the rise of certain guys so that you don't overshoot your target, I think it's a reasonable projection. So for Luka, I'm happy taking him there. I mean, you just look at his production in threes and points and rebounds and assists and across the board. And yeah, I might have him too high on steals, and I might have him too high on blocks by, a bee's dick, as you said. But overall, I think it's a reasonable projection, and I think that he's not going to crap the bed on you and end up being a 5th or 6th round player. At least I don't think he would.
No, look, and really the fact that he was down at 54 last year was the percentages, which were a combination that even Russell Westbrook could get jealous out of how bad both of those percentages were, especially over the end of the season. He averaged 22.5, 10, and 7.5. But the percentages were both -2 Z scores in field goal and free throw, which is horrifically bad, and that just brings that number all the way back down. Again, if you punt those percentages, we're talking top 20 already in that portion for last season. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a top 10 player this season. If that efficiency goes from 43 from the field to 46, if he goes from 71 from the line to 78, these are all, that's not stupid to think that. If he goes from 33 from 3 to 36, I'm not talking about a bloke coming in and shooting 48% Joe Harris style from 3 or being a 92% Jamal Murray free throw shooter. These are not crazy jumps, and if they happen, then that means, of course, once your efficiency goes up, your scoring will go up as well. You could average 26, 9, and 8. That's not, I don't think that's stupidly crazy. So there's significant upside there.
Small forward on that team as well. So there's reason to believe that Rick Carlisle, who has I've seen reports saying Rick Carlisle wants Doncic in shape so that he can play him more minutes this year. And if we look historically at what Rick Carlisle has done with guys like Dirk throughout their career, Dirk played like 37 minutes a game for like 10 straight years. And I think we're necessarily going to maybe get to that level, but there's definitely room for Doncic to play another minute or two on top of our projections if Carlisle wants him to.
Yep, I agree with that. Let's go on to my ones now, Kyle. Got a couple of names left here. Which one do you want to attack?
Jakob Poeltl, baby.
Jakob Poeltl. Okay, I'm not that high on him, but I am higher than you. So ask me. What do you want to know?
Guess this one seems like it's an easy one. You expect him to play more minutes at center, and for LaMarcus to shift and play more minutes at power forward, essentially. And that's definitely a possibility. I just think that the presence of DeMarre Carroll and Rudy Gay to take up power forward minutes, and the fact that the depth that the Spurs have in the backcourt is probably going to push certain guys up to small forward. It's going to keep DeMar DeRozan at small forward all season. So that means Rudy Gay and DeMarre Carroll are going to have to play most of their minutes at power forward. Like, I think just everything gets pushed down, shit runs downhill. And like eventually Jakob Poeltl is just going to get pushed out of the rotation for some of those minutes that some people might expect.
I think that Popovich should start Aldridge at center and have Gay and Carroll play power forward. But this is Popovich, who just loves running with two bigs. And that's where I have that issue there, because there is no other center on this team. There is Aldridge, who refuses to call himself a center, Anthony Davis style, and Popovich wants him to play at the 4. And there's Poeltl. There's no one else. Unless you believe in Drew Eubanks or Chimezie Metu, which I don't. Metu's having a nice World Cup, but that's not enough for these guys to play center. So that's where I go, who is going to play these minutes? Unless they're going to commit to Aldridge as a full-time starting center. I just see him. I've got him at 24 minutes. You've got him at 20. I just see it. Now, his minutes over the end of the season were weird. 34, 26, 18, then 27, 29, 27, 25, 25, then 14, 15, 25, 20, 19, 12, 10, 17. It's so hard to get a pattern on those minutes because they're all over the place. And some of them were fouls, some of them were matchup based. It's hard to understand what Popovich is going to do. Again, if I was coaching that team, and I'm not the coach of Greg Popovich is, of course, I'm nowhere near. I'm not anywhere near that. So I'm not questioning that because he's one of the guys that you find it hard to question, even though he makes some questionable moves at times. I wouldn't want to be starting both Poeltl and Aldridge, but he's shown a history of doing it, especially over the back end of the season as Poeltl became more comfortable in their system. And there absolutely just no other center on the roster means to me that they have some faith in him.
Those are all good points, and you're right. The fact that there is no other depth on that team, it's open. I think in some respects the reason why I maybe have Poeltl at 20 minutes and not closer to your 24 too, is because going into last season, I expected Poeltl to play closer to like 25, 26 minutes a game initially. I looked at him and I said, he's going to be the guy. I said, Pop is going to love the way that he's just, I do my job. I don't try to do anything outside of my job. And that's going to lead to more minutes than a lot of people expect. And it didn't really pan out for whatever reason. So I think it just kind of made me take my foot off the accelerator a little bit with Poeltl in some respects this season. And that might be one aspect of my bias in regard to his projection.
When I'm doing these mock drafts and look at my projections at the end of the draft, Poeltl sitting at the top, I have that same feeling. Oh, I got sucked into this last season and he just barely played, especially to begin the season. And then my brain kicks back in and goes, who else is going to do it? Who else is going to do it? Yes, I would love Carroll and Gay to play exclusively at power forward. But I'm not convinced that Popovich is going to do that. So this is a last round pick if you're looking for a field goal percentage, blocks, rebounds type of a bump. If it doesn't work, his ass is out of there straight away. So that doesn't really bother me. Maybe his upside is not all that high. Actually, it's not all that high. I still think he can become a good player. I'm just not sure that we're going to get 27 minutes. I'm actually pretty bloody confident we're not going to get 27 minutes a night out of Jakob Poeltl for this season. But he is a guy that I'm a little bit more confident in his projection than what you are. Kyle, Pascal Siakam, you have got him projected at 28. I've got him at 36. It's not that big of a difference. And again, some of that comes down to other guys who got projected around him. I have penalised him for this coming season for being the number one guy in Toronto. Now, we both think he's going to take a big leap in usage. He's going to score 20-plus points per game, but I've docked him in terms of efficiency. Being that number one guy, he's not surprising anybody anymore. Best defenders, defensive schemes go his way. So that legendary efficiency, true shooting of 63% where he was at last year, I've docked him more than you have for that this season. So what makes you think that Siakam can keep up that efficiency, which really fueled his best category last season was field goal percentage, and it wasn't even remotely close. In fact, he was 6 times more valuable in that category than he was in his next category, which was points. So what makes you think that he can keep that level of efficiency as high as, or close to as high as what it was?
It might be a reaction to discounting him in the past. I might be overreacting in some respects. But he shot 55% from the field last year, and I've got him shooting 53%. So I do see some reduction there for him in regard to his efficiency, but I do see him maybe getting more tired when he goes to the free throw line. So maybe there's a little bit of a kickback in that down to, I've got him at 78%. So there's ways that he could regress. I think I was also emboldened by recently Coach Nick Nurse. He was doing an interview about the Canadian national team, and he was talking about the Raptors and talking about Pascal Siakam. And he started to, the question was, what do you expect for Pascal now that Kawhi's not gone? And Elderson out that he thinks that Pascal should step up to be the number one guy on both sides of the ball and to not necessarily do everything that Kawhi did or to take all the shots that Kawhi's leaving behind. Those will get spread around, but you just expect him to do a little bit more. So I'm expecting a little bit more of assists with Kawhi out of the way. Maybe Pascal grabs a couple more rebounds. Yep. His minutes are more keyed in, like you're going to get 34 plus a night from Pascal, and maybe even more than that, because with Kawhi, his minutes may have been artificially limited based on his own, I think Kawhi gave his rotation to Nurse and not the other way around. So, as much as you might look and scrutinize. I still think that there's a little bit of upside for Pascal for my projection too. It is scary to look at his his points projection, and to see that he only scored 16.9 last season, and to see me projecting him for essentially 5 more than that, or 4.5 more than that. It's a big jump, but he was great in the finals. He keeps rising above everybody's expectations. So I'm just I guess I'm done discounting Pascal and doubting him in many ways.
Interestingly enough, I have him projected with more points and a higher usage, but a lower overall rank again, because efficiency is a key part there. You've got him marginally more assists, marginally more steals as well. In those defensive numbers, did take a bit of a hit with Siakam last season, taking on a larger offensive role. Let's move on, Kyle, to the last player here that you have an issue with me in the projections. It is Caris LeVert. All right, tell me what do you want to know?
This is a reaction to, so for Caris, you have Caris at 31 minutes per game.
Yep.
Projection this season, and I'm waiting to hear I'm interested to hear your argument for that, but it's not to say I don't understand it. However, for the first 3 seasons that Kenny Atkinson has been the coach for the Nets, he has not played any of his players over 30 minutes per game. Whether it was the first season where he played Brook Lopez 29.7 minutes per game, I think it was. The second season where DeMar Carroll led the team with 29.9 minutes per game, or last season where we saw Joe Harris and D'Angelo Russell both average 30.2 minutes per game over the course of the season. Having said all that, this is a new iteration of the Nets. This is the Nets with the superstar in tow, with LeVert signed to an extension, where we might see Kyrie Irving come in and say, hey, look, dude, I love this deeper rotation. Everybody on the team plays kind of thing that we've got going on here. I'm Kyrie Irving. I'm trying to win an MVP, especially in this season with Kevin Durant not around because he's out with his Achilles injury. You're going to have to give me enough runway to compete for the awards that I should be getting recognized for. So that's my main bugaboo about Caris LeVert, is like, he's just not going to get the minutes required. Maybe should.
That is, I think you've answered the question for me, I think, and it is that the Nets transitioning now into, no, we are good now. We are going to be good, and we are trying to build into a championship team for next season, and our best players are Kyrie Irving and Caris LeVert. So I agree. Yeah, we're not going to see Irving subjected to the D'Angelo Russell diet of 30 minutes a game. And I think LeVert will be that guy that also pushes up. Now, in the playoffs, the last 2 games, he played 42 minutes and 31 minutes. Of course, the playoffs are different to the regular season. But the 5 playoff games, he went 23-4, 13-4, 26-7, 25-5-6, and 18-3-4. Yeah, he was a monster in that playoff series for the Nets against the Sixers. I think he's their second best player clearly at the moment, not including Kevin Durant. I also have him improving. Now, his free throws were trash last year for whatever reason, 69%.
Giggity!
But previously he'd been at 71 and 72, and he was a pretty good free throw shooter in Michigan as well. So I think that number can come up. I think that also the presence of Irving might help his field goal percentage. So that's another big difference we've got there. Now, his field goal percentage has always been around that 43-44 mark. I've got it jumping a little bit this season, as well as his 3-point percentage. Again, I just think fully healthy, 4th-year guy, better players around him now. I think that'll help him there. I could be wrong in that. I know that when I was talking to Matt Smith about Caris, he said I was surprised at how low he actually came out. Matt was thinking top 60 perhaps when we looked at the projection. So I think there's still some upside in Caris here for this coming season. But the minutes is a concern. I don't know what Atkinson's going to do. I think if I'm looking at it logically, I agree with what you said, but he could just come out and say, nah, well, we're just going to play 130 regardless.
Hey, dude, as far as the eye test goes with Caris and the fact that he's at 121 in the rankings for my projection, it makes me want to punch myself in the face and go back in there and try to work the numbers to get him higher up. But then again, I see that you have, even with you giving him the 31 minutes and maybe the benefit of the doubt in some respects, like, yeah, you're projecting him for even the improvements that you're projecting for him are modest. So yeah, like, it's completely reasonable. There definitely is we saw how good he was playing at the beginning of last season before he got hurt. everybody was starting to talk about him being a potential all-star candidate for crying out loud before the narratives around D'Angelo Russell really got built up, and he ended up becoming an all-star. So like the ceiling or the possibilities for LeVert to exceed our expectations are definitely there. And it's just a matter of like, I'm probably not going to get him. Whereas based on my rankings and where he's fallen out, I definitely do think he's someone to target, in the 7th, 8th, 9th round. You can definitely start considering taking Caris LeVert. I guess, where would you necessarily be targeting him? Is it right around where your ranking falls with him, or would you maybe go a little bit higher with him?
No, I'd be happy to go a little bit higher. It just depends, again, what I'm looking for in that position, because getting 4 or 5 assists from the wing player can be really valuable at that point, and I think you've got him as an 8th round guy. I'd be happy to go inside the top 80 to grab him there. You've talked about it already, the flatness of these rankings. Say, I've got him 86, you got him 120, but the Z-score difference overall value is 0.23 between us, which sounds like a lot. But when you also go back up to the top of my projections, I've got Giannis at 5 and Embiid at 6 in per game basis, and the difference between those guys is 0.24. So that's one position, 5 to 6. So we're talking about LeVert here being 34 spots difference in our rankings. Like, everything gets so squished in towards that back end of drafts that it is important to know that those differences aren't as wild as maybe they seem on the surface without really digging into it. That's the last one of my ones we're going to talk about, Kyle. So let's wrap it up by going through onto your one. And the guy we need to talk about here is Davis Bertans, the Ginger Ninja, now over in Washington. I think that you think that he is going to be a locked-in starter for this Wizards team. You've got him at 31 minutes a night, 87. I've got him at 28 minutes a night, the 126th ranked player, almost the exact opposite of our Caris LeVert rankings there. What makes you so confident in what we're seeing from Bertans? Because this Wizards starting lineup, it's a bloody mystery. We're having conflicting reports from locked-in reporters about what's going to happen with this lineup.
Exactly. And in some respects, they both sound confident about who they're projecting for the starting lineups. But when you really break down this Wizards team, there's 2 positions that are locked up. You've got shooting guard with Bradley Beal. You've got center with Thomas Bryant. Once Dwight Howard got traded and they signed Thomas Bryant to that extension, Thomas Bryant's locked into his role. He's going to play a lot of minutes. He's going to, he should be good as long as there's not this regression. If the track keeps going the way it was at the last season, we should see a great Thomas Bryant this year. But as far as the point guard spot, it's open door. Who's going to start there? Is it Isaiah Thomas? Is it Ish Smith? Is it just a timeshare? Probably, because there's also the talk about Isaiah Thomas being on some kind of minutes restriction. Is it, which is not something you usually hear around Scott Brooks, is a minutes restriction.
Oh, no.
At small forward and power forward. Now, they drafted Rui Hachimura with a high pick. It's very possible that his headline play, is it good? Like, that's just it. Should we be getting hyped up about Rui Hachimura?
I'm not. People are getting very excited.
I have to be honest, I need to watch more of his play here in the FIBA stuff, or what are they playing right now?
Yeah, for the World Cup in China.
World Cup. So there's a lot of hype going on about Rui right now, but like, one of the highlights that was on Twitter was him dunking on Miles Turner, and then you look at the score, and the Japanese national team was down by 45 at that point. And it's just like, no shit, Miles Turner wasn't trying to stop some kind of hammer jam at the rim. So anyways, talking about the Wizards and Davis Bertans, it's the fact that he can play small forward and power forward, and the options that the team has at small forward and power forward. Look, there's a lot of people, as you pointed out already, are coming out and saying, well, Rui Hachimura might start at power forward, Davis Bertans might start at power forward, Troy Brown might start at small forward, Davis Bertans might start at small forward. I like that Davis Bertans is at least mentioned in both of those situations, where they're saying he might start at small forward, he might start at power forward, and that's not unreasonable considering who else is at an option there. I mean, are they going to start Jordan McRae and then slide Bradley Beal up to small forward? No way in hell, right?
No,
maybe.
No.
Are they going to field? Because guess what? He's 2 years older than Troy Brown. Reasons to think that. Sorry, I'm like getting all like emotional, like animated about this for no reason. So yeah, there's so much ambiguity there, and if there's one guy who I think is going to be guaranteed minutes, who's going to help spread the floor around Bradley Beal and Thomas Bryant, and just actually provide a consistent shooter for that team, or a consistent veteran presence for that team, that Bradley Beal is going to be able to rely on, it's going to be Davis Bertans. So when I'm looking at that roster, I feel like he's got to get 30 minutes or more on that squad.
I agree that he is going to get a significant chunk of minutes. I just think it's more in that 28 zone, because I would hope that the Wizards would try and prioritize Brown and even Hachimura there, regardless of what they do. Again, I don't think Hachimura is going to start to begin the year. I think Bertans will get that spot. I don't like the idea of him playing at small forward. I think he is more of a power forward. His perimeter defense would be a real issue, but he needs to play, because he needs to get out there and provide some ability to shoot and to space the floor. And I think he's going to play 28 a night, which again is higher than a lot of people might expect. You've just gone a step further than that. You've got him at a higher usage. You've got him at a higher assist rate as well. So that's all tying into, I guess, you having more faith in that role there. I'm not fully convinced of what Brooks is going to do. It is one of the most up and down or up in the air teams, I guess, in terms of how this rotation is going to play out. And I think that it might also be a case with Bertans that when we get to February, maybe instead of playing 30 a night, he's playing 24 a night. And that's a concern for me as well when trying to balance these numbers out over the course of the season. But he is just a guy we're looking at more as a later round guy. Now, you've got him in the top 90, so I'll reverse that question back to you that you threw to me with LeVert. That's an 8th round type of projection. Where would you be okay taking? Would you go further than that? Or given the ADP and the rank of him, that you could just sit back and get him in the 10th, maybe the 11th?
That's one of the fun things about Bertans is I'll put him in my queue and I'll just sit there and watch him, and I'll just be like, all right, I'm going to wait until everybody else that I think has a more secure role. Because that's just it. When you're getting down to the end of your draft, I'm pretty much evaluating from player to player. I'm saying, who's going to play? Who can I count on?
Yep.
Like I might take Isaiah Thomas with my final pick in a draft and say it's a toss up. He might be healthy. He might rebound. He might be the starter. He might play 30 minutes, but he also might play 23 minutes off the bench behind Ish Smith and never really be worth rostering beyond maybe streaming options for certain periods of the season. So when I'm drafting, no, I'm not going to draft Davis Bertans until it gets to a point where, his ranking is great. And that gives me excitement about drafting him later, but that's not where I'm drafting him. I'm going to draft Davis Bertans with one of my last 2 to 3 picks, depending on who else is still available. I'm taking him after Thomas Satoransky and a number of other players who I think have more secure roles. Having said all that, when you're getting near the end of the draft, I'm looking at Davis Bertans and this roster, and I think his role is pretty damn secure. Even if it is just the 28 minutes, like the 28 minutes that you project him for, I'm saying that's his floor. So that means we're expecting, Josh, even with your lower usage and stuff at 28 minutes, it's 2.7 threes per game that you can get at the end of your draft.
Exactly. Yeah, I think he's a great last pick. Oh, second last pick even.
Sir.
Don't know where you are, Kyle. I don't get you back.
I don't have anything else to say. I was leaving it to you. And I think we've talked about everybody, haven't we?
Yep, that is it for this show. It's gone a bit longer than usual, but I hope you got some good information out of that. Kyle just wrote that article on Danilo Gallinari over on Basketball Monster, so check that out. You can also find him on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA. Kyle, thank you for jumping on the show with me again.
Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate it. It's always fun to talk to you, man. I don't know, maybe we can do it more this year.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Guys, subscribe to this podcast. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, all that good stuff. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Tim Frazier.